Tracks it down in front. Matthews to Marner. After Hurry, tips scores. John Tavares, overtime winner.
This is absolutely unbelievable by Austin Matthews. A complete turnaround. Take the cake to Mitch Marner.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of From the Booth. I'm John Bartlett alongside Greg Millen, and today we're going to talk to a good friend of ours, the TV play-by-play voice of the Detroit Red Wings, Ken Daniels.
Yeah, former CBC Hockey Night in Canada announcer. In fact, I did a few games with him way back in the days. Looking forward to talking to him.
Got his start in Toronto, worked his way through Hockey Night and on to Detroit in the Motor City. Let's welcome our good friend, Ken Daniels. Great to have our good friend Ken Daniels join us. Kenny, how are you?
Good, John. Greg, nice to be with you guys. It's nice to be with anybody, quite frankly, outside of my wife and my dog, so it's all good.
Isn't that the truth?
Yes. Well,
no fights yet, Ken?
What's that?
I said no fights yet at home? Like, you know?
With the dog, no.
With the dog,
he's perfect. Well, we'll leave it at that.
Yes.
Exactly.
No. You know what? We spend our evenings watching TV together, and we spend the day either I'm reading or listening podcasts, watching my stuff, she's watching her stuff, and we go for about an hour walk with the dog every afternoon about 3, and she puts her headsets on and I put mine on, so we're all good.
How's the dog holding up? Because I've seen so many dogs just exhausted from too much walking.
Yeah, and all the stuff online about the dogs. Please, what's with these humans? Get out. I've had enough. This is my 7th walk today. Jack Daniels is wonderful. He's been on 2 videos that I posted for Fox Sports Detroit. So Jack's great. He's just figuring, why are you people home all the time? But, yeah, no, wonderful. And you look at those eyes, and he's got no clue what's going on. But you know what? It's funny, and dogs sense it. When you're sad and there's anxiety and we're all stressed out and just wondering about the what if, because the world's going to change, and I've been sad on some days and just thinking about all our freelancers who are out of work, unemployed. And when I get sad and sit with my wife, and he'll come sit right next to me and she goes, look at that. He just knows. And they do. It's amazing. They do.
Yeah, that is so true. That is so true.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we've got a little something here, a little show and tell time we can start off with first here, because we've got the wonderful, look at this.
Uh-oh.
There
it
you
is.
go. The talking bobblehead, a staple in my collection for Ken and Mickey there. So I just thought we'd show everyone that. That's a fantastic little piece we have.
Thank you. The only calls you're going to get right now, so that's good, though. That's good. I'm glad you have that. That's it.
And since we're on a broadcasting theme, I think people would like to know, particularly young people that want to get into business, how did you start in broadcasting, and how did you start even more so as a play-by-play guy?
Play-by-play guy would have started in high school doing the reports for the school public address system every morning at 10:45, although probably some of the teachers hated it and had to turn me down. But I was playing high school hockey for Mike Keenan. Leo Cahill was the local sports guy in Toronto and former Toronto Argonauts head coach, and a great guy, and we've lost Leo. And Leo Cahill used to work at Chum Sports in the morning. I grew up listening to Dave Wright, Brian Henderson, Leo Cahill, and he'd come on with that staccato, "This is Leo Cahill, Chum Sports." And I used to mimic Leo Cahill doing the high school broadcast. So I'd go home after a game, and I played the game, although not that much for Mike. Greg, you know what that's all about. So I wouldn't play that much. Yeah, I know. So, sit on the end of the bench many times. But I'd go home and write the report, whether it be that or for the football team, which was horrible at Forest Hill Collegiate, and the swimming meets, and just do the high school sports recap, write it, type it out on the old typewriter, and then broadcast it. And really, that's how I got my start in broadcasting. But it started from the age of 10, going to sleep listening to Foster Hewitt or Dan Kelly when I could get KMOX out of St. Louis with the radio underneath my pillow. And I just fell in love with the game, and they just brought me to the building, and I just so badly wanted to do it and fell asleep listening to them and late West Coast games. So I literally dreamed my job. I did. I just wanted to do it from the age of 10 and followed my dream, which I say, if I could do it, you guys saying anybody can do it, right? Your dreams are probably the exact same as mine.
And then what from there?
From high school, I know I wrote Brian Williams a letter at age 17. Brian Williams from CBC Television at the time. Can I talk about careers in journalism? He was nice enough to call me back. And that was when I was 17 years old. And then he said, go get a degree, no matter what it is, English, political science, sociology, go to university, show them you can get that. And I did. I got my BA at York University. Not there much, studied a lot of essay courses that I wrote at home. I was a good typist. My 8th grade typing class was probably the best thing I ever took, because it got me through a lot of things. And then I just applied to every radio station throughout Ontario. Penetanguishene, Ontario turned me down. And finally, a radio station out in Oshawa, just when I graduated from York University, gave me a job to do morning news and sports on CKQT and CKAR, the AM/FM station in Oshawa outside Toronto, and did the political beat. And then Larry Silver, 8 months later, hired me to overnight news in Toronto. And then years after being there, Alan Davis, when they needed a fill-in for Joe Bowen, who was doing global television, said, I need you to come do hockey, because I'd done the Olympics. I'd already worked for CBC Television. I graduated to, work in TV. And Alan said, I need you to do radio at Toronto Maple Leafs hockey. And I said, well, I'm moving tomorrow, Alan. And he said, get someone else to move your effing ottoman. I'm offering you Toronto Maple Leafs hockey. Leafs were playing the Bruins. And I said, okay. And I got my friends to move my ottoman and the rest of the furniture. And I did my first ever hockey game was in the NHL, Toronto, Boston. So it's, I always say luck is when preparation meets opportunity. So everything I had done to that time, whether it be as poor as I think I was at the Seoul Olympics, doing everything I didn't know anything about, from track and the velodrome and some baseball, all the different cycling, rowing, canoeing, that was my first foray into real play-by-play. But I had done TV, I had done radio for 8 years, so it all prepared me to say, okay, I can do that, I can get through this. And it turned out okay. And then the next year got more games, and then John Shannon gave me a chance after I was hosting Hockey Night to do some play-by-play with you, Greg, on TV.
And a Buffalo series we had a lot of fun with at one point.
That Buffalo series, by the way, Buffalo, Ottawa, 7 games. And I remember, because it was really my first real, that was the tape that I used actually to get the job in Detroit. But it was my first full series of getting a prime series, Ottawa, Buffalo, 7-game series that Buffalo won in 7, and then went on to play Philadelphia. And that's when Dave Strader, the late, great Dave Strader, walked into my booth of that second round series and said, Mickey Redmond wants you to apply for the job in Detroit because there's an opening there. And that's how that worked. But I remember you and I, we did the Ottawa series against Buffalo, and we had Mark Askin was our producer. And we said to John Shannon, how did someone like Greg and me wind up with Mark Askin as our producer? And Shannon said, so you guys wouldn't F it up. That's we gave you the best producer so you wouldn't screw it up. I don't know if we're allowed to swear her or not, but I'm keeping it clean.
We'll
that's
keep
good
it clean.
enough.
Yeah. It's a broadcast kind of show, so we'll keep it clean.
Yeah.
When you talk about thinking back to your start in the first game that you had and all that kind of stuff, is there anyone that stands out to you that was maybe a big influence on you? I remember you and I have known each other for many years now. You knew me when I was doing the Marlies in the American Hockey League, and I remember when I was first doing some preseason games with Toronto years ago, I was in Detroit, and you were so kind and welcoming and great to just get along with, and that's probably why we have such a great friendship that we do now. But so I look at you as somebody that I remember when I was first breaking into the NHL as being a great person to lean on. But is there someone that you remember in your career coming up that was a big influence for you?
Well, certainly, as I say, Brian Williams was a huge influence, because as much as I wrote Brian a letter when I was 17 years old, and then somehow wound up getting the job there just by applying because I heard there was an opening while working in radio. I ran into Don Martin at CBC Sports, and he said they're looking for a summer replacement on TV, because I've been doing radio for years. And I said, I'd love to apply. I've applied to Howard Bernstein before, and he never called me back. He said, call him on Monday. He'll answer your call. I did. And I wound up getting the job. So again, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. Everything I had done led to that job. But I think for me, Alan Davis, who started the first all sports radio network in Canada, The Fan, when it was CJCL. So I knew Alan because we worked together. Then Alan became the program director at that station. Scott Metcalf was a big influence, the news director there. So all those people who just guided me along the way, I think overall in terms of play-by-play, I think it was just by osmosis and listening to Bob Cole and Dan Kelly and Danny Gallivan, whose name's right behind you, and the greats of the game, and just picking up, yeah, there it is, Danny Gallivan way as to how to do it. And just little bits and pieces along the way, I think, were those who guided me. And then John Shannon, whom I just met while doing Leaf Radio, and he was producing Minnesota North Stars games when Dave Hodge was calling play-by-play. And we'd go for a drink after the game and met Dave, and then John just remembered meeting me. So when he heard that, and he was coming back to hockey night, he said, I heard you do Leaf Radio and I know you a little bit. I want to put you on TV, but you got to stop doing radio so you won't have the bad habits you develop on television from radio. So it's just all those people, folks meeting along the way who just guide you and took the time. And it's funny when you say those, and you meet and gracious of time. When I wrote Brian Williams a letter at 17 and he answered, and every month or so I'd call Brian. I met him a couple of times, went down to the TV station CBLT on Church Street, and then I'd call Brian every month and he'd say, I got nothing for you this month, call me next month. And I'm 18, 19 years old. Like, what was he really going to do for me? Well, now I'm 26 years old. I now get the job at CBLT local television because Brian had moved on to network. So basically, I'm replacing Brian Williams in his office, working with Bill Lawrence. Remember Bill Lawrence from Tiny Talent Time? The weather guy at CBC, one of the greatest gentlemen you'd ever meet. Tiny little office that he shared with Brian Williams and now was sharing with me and Don Martin and Vic Router at the time. And kids would call me now. I'd been there for a few months and I'd say, yeah, give me a call next month, and hang up the phone. And Bill Lawrence would say, you're just like Brian Williams. Kids used to call Brian Williams all the time asking him for help. And now you're doing that. I said, I was one of those kids calling Brian Williams. You got to pay it forward. And that's what you do in this business, right? We pay it forward. I think we all do. And that's why I would say you guys are so well respected too. And Greg, what you're doing and helping and teaching in the industry, that's what we do because we're thankful. And if the crisis we're going through now doesn't give you pause, as the NHL's on pause, just to think how grateful we should be. My son passing gave me gratitude for life and not take anything for granted. And this has put an exclamation point on that. So we have to be.
Boy, how well said. I don't think we could say anything any better, Ken, because you've lived it. I do want to ask you about Mickey. We have to do that before we close. And also the time that, because I happened to be at Shannon's house out of a fluke. And Shannon, of course, was a tough guy back then and as a boss, but a great boss. But you had to tell him that you were moving to Detroit. And I know that there are a lot of tears in that one. And then maybe fast forward to we don't have a lot of time, but your experience with Mickey in Detroit as well.
Yeah, there were tears on Lionsgate Drive in Toronto, sitting on my front porch. I'll never forget it, calling John, and you were there. And I didn't know because we'd agreed in principle on a contract, a handshake agreement to stay with Hockey Night, and then went back and forth with Fox. I didn't think I'd get the job with the Red Wings because I applied in June. It's now like September 5th. And they finally gave me what I wanted. And I had to tell John, and I was scared, right? You're moving your family. Didn't know I was used to working with you, Greg, and you didn't know what to do. And then John said, you got to go because I can maybe give you 27 weeks or so. You need to call 80 games to get better. You need to get better at what you do. So go. You have to go. And John pushed me. So a big influence. Maybe he just wanted me gone. I don't know. But a big influence. And then to work with Mickey. And as I say, Mickey's like Jed Clampett, the Beverly Hillbillies. He's just old school, but a wonderful friend. And he just called me before I got in here. He checks in every day because, his age, he's over 70. He's had cancers in both lungs. He can't afford at all to come near anybody. So he's just on lockdown because he's in the worst category to get something like this, and knock wood. He's been safe as can be and taking every precaution and all the oils he does and thieves and spraying everything down. So he's very careful, and we check in every day. We're best of friends. Our wives are our best of friends and travel together. And to have a broadcast partner now for 23 years, we're the longest serving TV duo currently in the National Hockey League, says something. He's old school, and I love him for that. I try to be a balance between the two. But, he's just a dear friend, and he's got my back and I've got his, and that's a broadcast partner like you guys, so it's all you can ask for in this business. It can be a cutthroat business, but not with us. And we all know that. You stick to those you're close with. It helps.
Well said for sure with that. You talk about, though, being with Mickey for so long, and you guys obviously have that great relationship. And developing your own style, when it comes to sort of philosophies as to how you approach the game and how you approach calling hockey. What is it that you look for? I know you mentioned Danny Gallivan is a great influence for all of us, really. We all live in Danny's shadow in that sense. But what's sort of the philosophy you like to take, the approach you like to take to a game?
Well, we like to have fun. And I know that Mickey and I have been together so long, like a marriage, and we've been together longer than my two marriages combined. So maybe that tells you something. So when Mickey walks into the broadcast booth and he says, "Kenny boy," it's like he says, "Honey, I'm home." And that's the way it is. And we laugh every game and we just get along. We can finish each other's sentences. Sometimes in a game, I'll say something, and then he says it right after, and we'll go to commercial break, and I go, "I'm just white noise to you, aren't I? I'm just white noise." And it's like a marriage, right? You hear it, but you don't know where it came from. You're not really paying attention. Somehow we know, and the truck laughs, but that's just Mickey and I don't really care. I know when I came in, it used to be the old school, like, with Bob Cole and whistle to whistle and the color guy doesn't jump in. It's not like that. And I cared about that back in 97. And Greg, maybe when you and I worked together at Hockey Night, that was that. But it's changed now. And I think it's back and forth, and have fun, especially the way our team struggled the last 4 years. You got to do something outside the game, keep the fans entertained. Some people are going to hate it. Some people say, just stick to play-by-play. Go, he's got it. That bores the crap out of me, quite frankly. I like to, I get mad at myself and my philosophy when I miss a call, and I try not to do that and back off that. You try to weave stories into a game, and some nights you're on, and some nights you're just a little bit off. And believe me, when we're a little bit off, you all know we're mad at ourselves, right? For missing it.
Yep.
Damn, I shouldn't have said it there. We all are. And we slam the table. Go, why did I do that? I should have waited. But live and learn. I've never had a perfect game. Probably never will. But the philosophy is we can just go back and forth in the game, rise to the big moments when you can. He knows to sort of back off when the play's the final 3 or 4 minutes. That's the play-by-play guy's time, I believe. But make it entertaining. Tell stories. I don't think we see enough teams often enough when it's East versus West. I think there are so many stars in the game that our game doesn't do enough justice to bring those stars so that fans can know them and become interested. We need to know more about the personality. And we have so little time now on face-offs and commercial breaks and reads, especially local broadcasts. How many promos you got to get in? Sometimes we try to get them in during games, but I also do it with the good intent of getting people to know the players who are the stars of the league.
It's funny you say that about Mickey coming in, because every time Greg comes in the booth, he does say, "Honey, I'm home." So
It's nice, though, isn't it?
Oh, it's very nice. Yeah, very nice.
What, Mickey likes to go down between the benches for the third period of the game because it's a different feel for him, and he really likes it. And I miss him when he goes down there. I'm just used to having the comfort of him up there, but I know he enjoys it. So that's fine too. The between the benches have changed the game too. I like the contact where you look at each other. You can put your hand up and finish each other's sentences too. But more often than not, we're not talking over each other too much, and that's a sign of just years being together.
Well, Greg's between the benches a lot, so when he ends up top with me, I'm like, "Hey, you're cramping my space."
Yeah, you have to spread out.
That's
Yeah,
right.
and sometimes, Kenny, as you well know, there's a couple of tricks that go on in the press box, perhaps, that keeps things a little bit light when I go upstairs. So I don't know that they want me up there too often.
Because you're a crap disturber. You're an SDer. You're a major SDer is what you are, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know. As long as he doesn't spill coffee on the notes, I can do that on my own. Jeff Rimmer from Columbus came into the booth one night to see me in Columbus and said hello and spilled my coffee all over my notes. I was so pissed, and to this day I've never forgiven him. Love the dude, but never forgiven him.
I'm pretty good at that, and normally there's a wall built between myself and the play-by-play guy because of it at times.
Yeah.
Well, you know why? You never put a lid on your coffee. I don't know why. I'm going to tell this story. On our last road trip, we're driving. He comes down to get in the car, and he's got a full cup of coffee, no lid on. And I'm like, "What are you doing?" He's like, no, I'm good. I got the balance. Well, sure enough, guess what happened? First bump, it's on the door. It's like, oh, not on my leg, not on my leg. Put a lid on your to-go cup. What is wrong with you?
Yeah, put a lid on it, Greg.
Put a lid on
It was a rental. The rental car. We're okay.
All right. Well, we got a few minutes left here, so let's talk a little hockey for a minute when it comes to Coach of the Year. When you look at that for the broadcaster side of things, who have you liked up to this point?
Well, I like Bruce Cassidy, and I love John Tortorella, and not just because I got the beard and I'm looking a little torts right now.
You are, actually.
I know. And I love Torts, and we've talked a little bit, and I think the job he did in Columbus, boy, through all the injuries that he had, and I know they're coming on a little bit just before the pause there, and they went through that rough struggle with all the injuries, and what he did was incredible. Bruce Cassidy in Boston, You have to like the job that Sullivan's done in Pittsburgh, and Sullivan and Torts are both best of friends. And in the West, I'm still partial because they were so bad for so long. And you can say, yeah, you have two superstars, but I think what Ken Holland did in bringing in Dave Tippett was just the perfect mix there. Now, some coaches have changed partway through the year, in a year that we didn't even finish, so that's tougher to even vote for them now in so many coaching changes that we had. But those would really, I think, be my 3 or 4 guys, with Sullivan, Jan Torts, and Cassidy and Tippett for me.
All good choices, Ken. Yeah, it's been a good year for coaches in some ways. It's been a bad year in others with all the fire. But the ones that have been able to hang around, and even some of the ones that have come in, have done some pretty nice jobs this year, I think.
Yeah, and it's really going to be interesting to see what happens if this season doesn't continue, and those who are maybe on the line, for being let go, or those who are in line maybe for jobs. What happens now? I mean, it's so different. What if free agency isn't until October and the season starts in November, and which is a possibility, I guess. I still think we're in this for a long time yet. Before I can't see them completing the season. I hope I'm wrong, and I know whether they go an expanded playoff and the Red Wings wouldn't be a part of that or whatever, but I don't know what's going to happen. I don't see it. I hope I'm wrong. I hope we get hockey, and I'll take it in July or August. I hope we're there. Thankful for that.
Oh, we all will. I think we're all hoping for the same thing, and there's just changes day by day, and the logistics of everything is going to be something that'll be a story to follow as well, how everything gets sorted out. So we'll have to see what happens. But Kenny, appreciate it, man. You're looking good with the beard, with the Torts look. You're the Torts look-alike. That's
thanks, man. That's okay.
I love that. We appreciate you coming on with us. There you go. Well, Ken is a great friend of ours, and just a super nice guy. And I know we were having some fun with the bobblehead here, but we should actually say that the bobblehead was in support of the Jamie Daniels Foundation. And this is Ken and his son, Jamie, and the foundation that he started for him in his name after a tragic loss of his son early on. And now he has the foundation to support a great cause with Greg.
Yeah, and a bunch of us had a table last year at his dinner. What a wonderful evening it was. Mickey Redmond was roasted that night, a lot of fun. And I know that this foundation has done some wonderful work in the Detroit area already.
And so, of course, for Ken, we love you and we love the foundation. So be sure to support the Jamie Daniels Foundation for a great cause as well. And maybe pick up one of those talking bobbleheads for your collection as well. That'll do it for this edition of From the Booth. Thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll see you next time. So long.
Stay safe, everybody.